With its seemingly long list of benefits, which includes boosting mood, alleviating pain, promoting healthy sleep and healthy digestion, improving skin conditions, and so many more, it's no wonder people are turning to essential oils to support their health and well-being. The popularity of these wonder-working oils is stirring interest in learning how to extract them for personal use or for business. Welcome to Extraction Essentials, where you'll learn and discover how to create a formula using quality engineered products. Hosted by Tony Frischknecht, this podcast is all about the process of extraction tools and the equipment that surrounds the extraction lab or facility. Create an income while enjoying the many benefits and uses of essential oils by tuning in to Extraction Essentials.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Extraction Essential. I'm your host, Tony Frischknecht, and I'm here again with Nick Gay, Head of Product Management. Nick has been walking us through the last couple episodes, and we've created a start to finish. So today we're going to actually finish out the series with him, discussing a few things. One, we're going to be talking, of course, about extracting, but we're going to be talking about the curing process of lavender, how that works. We're also going to be talking about subcritical and supercritical. What are those? Why do those matter? I hear these things. I don't know what they mean. So hopefully we can give you guys a little bit of context behind that so you can understand a little bit more of what this is and why these are important. And then, of course, we're going to talk about the extractor, the Little Buddy Extractor per se. And some of you guys are maybe watching this show for the first time. It's not the only way to extract, but we have found it's one of the best ways to extract purity out of plants and really get the top-notch quality that you need if you're creating a product. So Nick, welcome to the show again. How are you doing?
Yeah, thanks. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Tony.
Absolutely. So Nick, last time we talked about harvesting and the growing process. Today, what's our next step? What are we doing?
Totally. Yeah. So I have these lavenders that we just harvested. And so this is actually the leaf from the clones we took. This is the Spanish lavender here. Here's the English lavender. And so in order to dry them, I'll just use like a paper bag. So this is quite the easiest way to do it. Just a paper bag, and then you just hang that up for about a week. With that said, depending on your humidity, wherever you're drying it, it may take 2 weeks. So the best, you should be about 40% humidity or lower if you're trying to dry a product out.
Why do you use a paper bag?
Yeah, so the paper bag, first of all, it holds it really easily. And then the paper itself is kind of like a membrane to let it dry. So the paper will get wet and then dry out from the moisture within it here. So yeah, it allows a little bit of airflow, and it's also, really easy. Everyone has a paper bag. With that said, they also make these like drying towers where there's like multiple shelves of netting.
Mm-hmm.
And that works really well if you're, of course, we're only drying this amount. If you're drying a bunch, then you're going to probably want one of those drying towers.
Okay.
Yeah, let me just throw these in here. And then right behind me over here, I actually have some lavender that I dried out last week. So I'll show you that here.
How long do you think that'll take to dry in that bag?
About a week.
Okay. So it's pretty quick.
Yeah, so it's pretty quick. So as you can see here, here's the dried out lavender.
How much is in there when you...
So yeah, this is a 1/2 pint ball jar.
Okay.
And you would think, oh, that's a lot. It's only 6 grams. So that it's not much at all. So you could see why, cloning and knowing how to grow lots of lavender can be really helpful, because I can put up to 30 grams in this chamber. So of course, for efficiency's sake, you want to be sure you're filling the container. But today, since that's what I got, that's what we're going to fill.
So that's basically a fifth of what can fit in the chamber that you have for the extraction machine, right?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. So even though it looks like, guys, if you're watching this on YouTube, even though it looks like it's a lot, once you, because you would have to smash this in the extraction machine to get 30 grams in there, right?
Exactly. Yes.
Is that going to cause any harm to the biomass?
No.
Okay. So there's no concern about destroying any properties in the plant matter itself.
No, not from compressing it. Because it's dry out. Let's say if it was wet, then yes, that could cause you some issues.
Okay.
But since it's dried, not so much of an issue. And sorry, go ahead, Tony.
Well, as people are out there and they're thinking, well, am I just creating this for myself, or am I creating this to sell, essential oil to friends and family? I mean, what would you say to them about the best way to do this? Because that seems like very little.
Yeah. So, if you have a big garden and you live in a region where lavender does really well, then this could be a very viable option where you just plant, a 50-foot row of lavender, and then every couple months go out there and harvest. You could be pulling in, about a pound of lavender, possibly.
Okay.
Even. So I'll kind of just show you the comparison here because this is the same type of lavender from the same plant. So
Okay.
on this side here, that's the wet live, we just harvested, still needs to dry lavender. And then this is the dried out lavender. So of course these flowers didn't start at the same exact size, but you can see how much moisture content is really in there and how much it kind of shrinks down,
Okay, so you've got the dried, and then you also have the very fresh harvest flower that you've taken. I think what I'd like to talk about real quickly is, what's the weight difference when you look at the fresh versus the dried? Because that can be kind of tough to understand when you're growing this and you're like, I'm going to have so much product and I'll be able to extract, or I'll be able to use this in my recipes. But what are the big differences? What can you tell just by looking at it and holding it in your hand?
Yeah, so I mean that's a great question. So typically, not specifically lavender, but a lot of plants in general will contain anywhere from 80 to 90% water weight. So you can expect to only retain about 10 to 20% of that weight by volume to actually get back once it's dry. So
that's huge. That's a big loss.
It's massive. That's definitely something you want to think about when you're harvesting, and then you throw it on the scale and like you're only gonna get 10 to 20% of that back, and 20 is like if you're really lucky. Yeah, that's kind of a rough road, and so I'm glad you mentioned that, Tony.
Okay, so let's get to. I told people that we were going to talk about subcritical and supercritical. Can you share with everybody what they are and what the differences between them are?
Yeah, absolutely. So our machine, it's a subcritical extraction, which is still using liquefied CO2 under pressure to go through the biomass and pull out the different oils and waxes and things like that. Whereas supercritical, well, and that's done under around 1,100 psi. We're usually about 900 psi, whereas supercritical is done over that psi range, 1,100 psi range, and typically there's a lot more heat needed in that process, so you can degrade certain things that you wouldn't in the subcritical extraction.
What do you do? What when you say certain things, what are those? What are some of those certain things, for example?
Well, it depends on what you're extracting.
Mm-hmm.
But you're gonna degrade some of the more volatile, more gentle terpenes and things like that, and you can also convert one thing to another thing just by heat and pressure. There's a lot of chemical reactions and things that can happen when you heat something up. Like you could turn sugar into caramel just with heat. So it's kind of like that sort of a thinking process.
So there's some chemistry that's involved.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why I'm not just going to say, oh, well, you're going to degrade this or that. Cause like, every compound that you're extracting, even, this lavender as opposed to that lavender, you're going to get different compounds and different medicinal quantities of things out of there.
So when people are wondering, well, what do you mean by compounds? There's also other things that the extraction, the Little Buddy Extractor is pulling out. What are some of those things that you're actually going to be seeing get collected at the end of the run of an extraction run?
Yeah. So the main, like, the desirables that most people are looking for in essential oils are the terpenes. And so the terpenes are obviously, it's what smells. It's
Okay.
what makes lavender smell good. But also terpenes have a lot of different medicinal qualities. So there's a few different terpenes out there that are actually FDA approved to treat certain ailments and things like that. So, it's pretty rare to hear, FDA approved essential oil sort of thing, so it's nice to know that. And so with that said, depending on what you're doing, you're going to be searching for different compounds. So like within lavender, the main terpene is lanolin, which, smells great. It has a few medicinal properties, but has far less medicinal properties than a lot of the other compounds within the plant. So whereas your steam distilled essential oil will have quite a bit more lanolin sometimes, but that's not necessarily what you're always looking for. Not everyone's looking for something just kind of solely as a perfume,
So in each plant, and we'll talk about lavender, how many different compounds are in a plant? And I'm sure this varies.
Yeah, it varies a lot. But typically, like when you send something out for an analysis, it'll be like a panel of anywhere from like 30 to 60 different terpenes at different percentages.
Okay. And when you're extracting with the Little Buddy, can you focus in on certain terpenes?
Yeah, I mean, if you've done some research and you've kind of ran the product multiple times, just by just smelling different products, you can tell a little bit. But if you really want to get into the nitty gritty, then, you can do multiple extractions, multiple different ways, and then send out that product for test results and see, let's see, by turning up the heat here or using no heat, do I get more of this or less of that, or turn this into that? So it's, definitely a lot of science and a little bit of trial and error.
And for those out there that don't want to get too detailed, how easy is it for them to do the extraction anyway?
I mean, just doing the extraction is very easy. You're going to see in a moment here, I'm going to be grinding up this dried lavender. We then put it into the biomass chamber, pop that on the machine, start running it. 4 hours later or longer, if you so choose, you're done. And really the only like me time of me turning levers and knobs and like things like that, it's only about 10-15 minutes. Whereas the rest of that 4 hour time period, I'm off working, or I'm in the garden, or making some more lavender clones or whatever.
Okay, Nick, why don't you take us through the next step of loading the collector for the Little Buddy?
Sounds great. Let me just get this out of your guys' view so you can actually see the machine. All right. So the next step, this is that lavender that I dried out, fully dried, ready to go. So the next step that I'm going to be doing is grinding it up. Of course, I'm doing this by hand right now. If you have quite a bit more, then you're going to want to use something like I like to use a Ninja blender sometimes, or you could use a coffee grinder depending on your material. But you want to make sure that it's all pretty uniformly ground up. And then once you have that all ground up, we're going to pour it into this vessel in small increments and pack in between.
You'll actually pack down the plant matter.
Yes.
So now,
and depending,
for you guys listening, he's just taking from a small jar and a mason jar, and he's putting it into a larger and breaking it up, getting it ready to fill the collector itself.
So yeah, as you can see, you don't want to do this with any more than this amount, because it takes quite a while.
Mm-hmm. Do you leave the stems in there, or are you pulling those off to the sides?
I've been pulling them off. You can leave them in there. It all just really depends on what you're trying to get out. If you're looking for, I mean, you'll pull a lot more. The stems typically contain a lot more waxes and
Okay.
like different colors that you don't necessarily want to pull through. But on some plants, you do extract the stems. So
Can you use the waxes for anything?
yeah, some people use them for a couple different things. Depending on what you're extracting, they have different uses. But for example, like there's certain types of starches that are left behind, actually left behind in this chamber because we filtered them out. That they use in the cosmetic industry as like a perfume, or not a perfume, but like a concealer base. So that's like the starch that binds all their compounds together or whatever. So yeah, depending on what you're extracting, the stuff in this chamber could be what you're looking for. Maybe what you're trying to do is get the essential oils out of something. So like, for example, when you're making candles and you put these, like if you want to put them on top of your candles, sometimes the essential oils can cause like leaching, like color leaching. So it can kind of like mess up your candle. So if you extract the essential oil out of it, then you just have a plant matter that's void of all the different other compounds that kind of mess you up.
Okay, so people would actually be using it more as a decorative than
Precisely.
Okay, gotcha. Very cool. So he's almost finished here. He's just cracking up the last couple pieces. And then the next step is, am I correct? We're going to load it in the...
Yeah, so I'm just grabbing my little funnel here. It makes life a lot easier.
Okay.
So like I said before, I just pour a little bit at a time. I have this shot glass here that I like to use to pack things down.
Okay, does that fit right in the...
Yeah, it fits pretty good. I have another thing that I usually use but I misplaced it. So as I said before, this is only 6 grams. So I'll show you once it's all packed down how much this chamber is actually filled.
Yeah, to your calculations, it should only be filled a fifth of the way up, right?
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so he's got most of it through the funnel now.
So you can see, so I haven't packed that yet. You can see it's pretty fluffy.
So it's like 3/4 of the way up in the chamber there.
And you want to make sure when you're packing it, you get a nice even pack. Because what can happen if you don't pack it well and evenly? Actually, same thing with planting pots is what people call channeling. So what will happen is, there'll be like those little pockets where there's air pockets, and that's where the liquid will actually travel through. So you don't want to do that with liquid CO2, and you don't want to do that with water when you're planting things, because a lot of times what will happen when you're planting is people won't push down the sides, and then the water just runs down the sides and out the bottom. So you're not actually watering your plant. So now I have this all pretty good tamped down. So yeah, it is about
it's
the way up.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. All right.
So
we have it's just under 1/4 of an ounce is what he has in there right now. Now he's sealing the top with the wing nuts, getting that all tight and sealed. As he finishes that, what is our next step after this, Nick?
Totally, yeah. So the next step, once I got this all sealed up and safe and ready to go, we're gonna put this onto the machine, which it's just a pretty easy, quick connection. So you just push it on there, and then you fill the machine up with CO2 into the chiller. And then I typically will run it for about 4 hours, although you can run it longer than that for sure, or less than that, depending on what you're looking for.
Okay, great. So one thing I want to make sure people understand out there is that this is a closed loop CO2 extractor that we're using right here. What does that mean, Nick?
Yeah, so what that means is, so we're putting CO2 into this side. It goes into the chiller. It then goes through this chamber once I put it on there. Of course, the machine's not running right now, but and then off into this chamber, and then back up into the chiller. So you're recirculating the entire time.
Okay.
So the initial CO2 you put in is going to be used throughout the entire extraction process. And then also, with that said, you can even recapture a lot of the CO2, not all of it. You lose, I would say every run you lose probably about 20% or so. And that's just from using the pressure to push the actual essential oils out of this tube here. But what will happen is you'll kind of push that CO2 back up into the chiller, close these two off, and the CO2 will just sit into there.
Okay.
While you're harvesting the machine. And then so that way, when you go to start your next run, you don't have to put quite as much CO2 in there. And then it's also already pre-chilled, ready to go.
Is CO2 expensive enough to be concerned about recapturing it?
Not at all. So, I'll usually, like at home, I use a 5-pound tank, which is, I don't have it right next to me right now, but it's about this tall. It costs maybe $30. And if I'm running the machine every single day, it'll last about a month for me. So
it's pretty inexpensive then.
Super inexpensive,
Okay.
$1 a day, especially if you're pumping, doing a couple runs every day on the machine. I mean, it's pretty negligible cost.
So for people that haven't seen large scale machine, this is more of a personal CO2 extractor or small scale. What sizes are out there that, there's not a lot of these type of machines that are small. In fact, we know very few. We're one of the very few. What are the size differences when you go to trying to extract a purity with CO2 extraction?
Yeah. I mean, this machine it's a very small. You could pick it up. It weighs about 50 pounds. It uses 110 power. The CO2 tank is small. You could put it in your car, bring it to your friend's house. It's super easy. Whereas most of the other CO2 extraction machines, you need a crane to lift the biomass into the machine. Or, the lid will be 300 pounds. So
you're just saying the actual plant matter itself, in the majority of the CO2, you need a crane for.
Exactly. So you can imagine, some of these machines are literally the size of a city block. Of course, that's on the far, the biggest end. But, most of these machines on the smaller end, I mean, I honestly don't know of many other machines this size, but most other machines are typically 6-7 feet wide by 6 feet tall. And then you also need ancillary equipment like chillers and heaters and, which are big, fridge size units and things like that. So, like my house is 300 square feet and I run this in there. Mm-hmm. If that puts it into perspective at all.
What kind of sound comes from it as it's running?
Yeah, it's super quiet. I mean, it's about the same sound as like a desktop monitor, or not monitor, the actual computer part. It's just a couple fans and that's about it. So
yeah, because the majority is pressure, right? It's just moving pressure through the system in the loop, as you described earlier.
Exactly. Yeah. No noisy pneumatic pumps or air compressors or large power draws. Like I said before, I mean, you could just plug this guy into the wall and start running.
So there's folks out there that are like, it's interesting to them. Of course, they're like, well, how much does it cost? You guys can check us out at extractionessentials.com. For this machine itself to do what it's doing, there are machines out there that are pharmaceutical grade type machines, and their costs go into the 60,000 plus for essentially what we're doing here. Mm-hmm. for the $8,000 price tag that is on this. Now, before you guys are like, oh my God, that's a lot of money, there's a lot of details that we have taken to shrink this cost from these $60,000 to $100,000 machines. There's a lot of things we've eliminated to make this simpler. And there's also a lot of ways that through our podcast, we want to be able to show you, if you want to turn this into a income stream, we can show you how to do that. There's so many different things that we can do with this, and we're learning all the time. so we want to make sure that you guys understand that at the end of the day, if this is something you're really interested in, we have tons of knowledge to follow up. Nick has tons of knowledge that will follow up with something like this. We hope you guys explore this more. And again, there's a lot of different ways to extract out there. But what we've found is to create the purity that's needed for some of these products out there that you guys are wanting to make. This is an exceptional way to do so. Now, with that said, if you guys can't afford it, or you guys really are like, well, think of it down the road, please listen to our show still, because there's going to be a lot of things that you can use this for, whatever extracting. If you're doing steam distill, Nick and I talk about in earlier episodes where we talk about steam and how easy it is to do. So there's a lot of things in there. In addition, he's walked us through the cloning process, walked us through some growing, simple stuff like that. And so we want you guys to take and learn from this. Again, no matter if you're using our machine, or, you think it's out of your price range, there's a lot of free stuff that we want to give you guys, because this is a lot of stuff that both all of us that are a part of Essential Extractions, that all of us have taken and done firsthand. And we want to save you guys some time. I mean, a lot of this is to save you time and money. And had I had a guy like Nick in my life back 10 years ago, it would have saved me so much more time. So we want to make sure you guys that are out there are looking for some good knowledge. We have it here, and we want to share that with you. That's something that we do, and we want to make sure we continue doing with you. We've got our products here. We've got the process has happened. We're making soap with it. We're making insect repellent. What do you see future episodes of us creating with this?
Yeah. So, in the future, we're going to hopefully we're talking to a few different guests to do some guest speaking and kind of analyzing some results that we've got done. And then also just continuing to make new products. And also, it's springtime. So as every day goes on, there are more things that I could be pulling out of my garden. So, the reason we're doing lavender is because that was one of the easy things for me to get right now. But, we're going to be doing hop extraction, some turmeric, different culinary herbs, and also infusions and things like that you can actually consume and flavorants and stuff like that.
Great. So this is to the listener out there, whether you're on YouTube or you're listening into the podcast. Tell us what you want us to extract. We can do that. So if you guys specifically tell us what you want, and here's the big and, can we get it? Right. So we want to be able to get it, because our we can extract numerous things, but also what is available to us. And generally, just like the farmer's market, the best tasting stuff or the best smelling stuff is going to be what you can get locally. So a lot of our constraint is only what we can access locally. But if it's possible, we will sure as heck run it for you. So you can reach out to us at extractionessentials.com. I guarantee, give us what you want. We'll even put your name, say this is, say Nick Gay sent this in and he wants us to extract eucalyptus. If we can get eucalyptus, we're going to run it, right? That's one that I'm looking forward to, because we haven't been able to do that. But stuff like that, for example, very simple. You can also reach out to us on our social media and ask us there too. So Nick, thank you so much for walking us through the process today. I've really enjoyed it, and I hope you guys have too. Please come join us next week as we jump into another new extraction. See you guys there.
You have just listened to another informative episode of Extraction Essentials with Tony Frischknecht. We invite you to come back next time as we strive to provide useful knowledge and tools every week to help you on your extraction business. You can also visit extractionessentials.com for additional resources and to know more about working with Tony. See you again next time.